let's jump over to the East. I think we're going to start with probably our most anticipated matchup, and for a lot of people, it's a lot of people's most anticipated matchup. The Battle of Ontario, it's coming back. We finally get to see the Leafs take on sort of new blood opponents for the first time in what feels like forever. It's kind of been a rotating carousel of the top of the Atlantic with Boston, with Florida, with Tampa, right? But this year, the Ottawa Senators, they've very, very surprised. They've surprised a lot of people, I think, 100%. Listen, we could talk about this for hours on end. Let's try to keep this one a little bit short. We do have to give a little bit of time to the other teams in the East. Guys, what do we think heading into this series? How confident are we as Leaf fans heading into this series?
Confidence is high. Confidence is high, and it should be high, right? Like this is the feeling right now, the passion right now. It's feeling good as a Leaf fan. I really don't think you can come into this series and feel timid about it. Like you have to put all the curse stuff and whatever aside if you're a Leaf fan and just enjoy the series for what it is. I do love the fact that it is the Battle of Ontario. And like you said, like new blood for like mine and Dave's generation. But Mando, you've probably got some memories of what this series is. And it's bad blood, it's old blood in a sense too. So I think this will be really uniting for the fan base at large, just kind of two generations. Because yeah, like all I've got is watching the highlight packs and seeing Darcy Tucker fight an entire bench, and like that's what I've got.
And then Joe Nieuwendyk put a couple beach balls past Patrick Lalime as well.
Oh my god!
Yeah, like it's great to watch, but you want to be able to experience it firsthand. So I'm really looking forward to that first and foremost before any analysis.
Yeah. What I'll say is growing up, it's funny you bring up like there's a bit of a generational gap. It's not a lot, but obviously I had a bit of experience watching this. I was still pretty young at the time, but my birthday is May 3rd. So for me, normally in the playoffs, it's like the second round is when my birthday would fall. So when we would have family gatherings for my birthday, we would have like blue and white parties because the Leafs were good in that time from around 5, 6, 7, 8 years of age, give or take, the early 2000s. So we wouldn't let my family, like my nonna would come in. We'd be like, you got to put on blue, nonna, otherwise you're not coming into the game. Like, I don't understand. You're sitting on the porch.
Don't come in with your presents.
None of this nice flowery shirt. Put on a jersey. So anyways, for a while, we would be able to watch a game. Like normally it would fall on a weekend. You'd watch the game. Leafs would likely win with the Chris Phillips and the Daniel Alfredsons of the world. And then there was a gap where, like, there was just sad birthdays. Because obviously nothing. They wouldn't make the second round. So I always associate my birthday with the Battle of Ontario in that, like, it was a great series. We always got a chance to kind of celebrate that second round matchup, which often it was. But at the end of the day, it was just kind of a great time. So I'm hoping that there's still that bad blood between the two. Obviously with Ridley Gregg, with what happened last year with Morgan Riley and Brady Tkachuk as just him as a human is going to be someone who stirs up the pot. So
we definitely got a taste of it last year. That definitely seemed to be like the pre. If you would have asked any Leaf fan 12 months ago that when that happened, within the next 12 months, you guys are going to be in a playoff series against each other.
Loved it.
I thought Ottawa was just going to be down and out for the next like couple of years. They didn't really seem to have things on track, and you know what? Good for them for making the push this year and getting into this series. And you know, thankfully that the Leafs won the Atlantic. They're the big dogs right now. It might not be so great for them though. Mando, I have a quick thing about your birthday story. So we also have blue and white parties at my house because my birthday was last Monday. It was on April 14th. So typically in years past, I would probably get like game 2 because game 2 would typically land near and around my birthday. So I would have family over. Or it was either game 1, game 2, or game 3. One of the three. And seemingly every year, whenever I had family over, the Leafs would just blow it. I can't tell you how many just brutal birthdays I've had. If you go back and look at the pictures, I'm smiling through a lot of sadness because there's a lot of playoff heartbreak there.
Blowing the candles with tears in his eyes. Like,
oh yeah. It wasn't great. So I will always, for the next few years, always associate my birthday with playoff heartbreak with my family. So I'm glad that you got to share in a little bit of fun at least. So
yeah.
It's a good story from both you guys. I wish I've got my birthday memories of Leafs preseason games in September. They're really really good.
It's definitely better that way. At least it
no heartbreak.
On the success of the Leafs, right? Which
in
terms of success is not great.
I'll save the Leafs preseason birthday story for another episode, but let's dig in here, boys. Let's dig in.
Yeah,
let's do it.
Marquee matchup time. Dude, we could go all over the place with this. I'm going to lay out for you guys what I considered and where I'm landing. So my first thought was just like, dude, it's Leafs versus themselves. Like this is like when you're in English class and you're starting to write essays and they're talking about like man versus environment.
This is man versus self. This is your 1,000-word essay here.
Yeah, that's the first place you got to go. And I'm like, okay. Let's look at the actual freaking rosters. Let's look at the players on the ice here. I've got two options here. Simple one, and it's kind of Leafs versus themselves too, is just like the power play. That's done them in so many times in the postseason. And this year's power play has been really good after having some not so great stretches, right? They finished the year 9th overall, 4th since Four Nations, and the Sens penalty kill 19th on the year, 18th since Four Nations, and their power play is 12th since Four Nations, 11th on the year. Our PK is 17th on the year and 27th since Four Nations, but I still think that special teams battle should be something that the Leafs can take advantage of. It just should be. It should be. I'm going to go with my last option here, though, that I considered, and I'm just going to give you this. Bobby McMahon and the third line, assuming that's where he plays, because we've seen Max Domi in the top 6 for a couple games here. But to me, it's about the third line with Bobby McMahon, Nick Robertson, and we'll see who's in the middle, if it's Pontus Holmberg, Max Domi, or Scott Laughton. But I want to see what they can do against, similar story to that Edmonton series, the Sens' bottom pairing. You've got 4 defensemen for Ottawa who you feel pretty good about. Jake Sanderson, Thomas Chabot, Artem Zub, Nick Jensen. And then take your pick of the litter, like if you're the Leafs, like who do you want to play? Travis Hamonic, Tyler Clevin, Dennis Gilbert, Nicholas Matanpalo. 2 of those guys are going to be in every night, and the Leafs don't really have a checking line of sorts. It's whatever's going to end up on the fourth line. But you've been trying all year to make this third line a scoring line, and that's led by Bobby McMahon, Nick Robertson. I need to see that those guys who haven't had, in Nick Robertson's case, didn't play games, I don't think, last playoffs.
I don't think so.
And Bobby McMahon didn't because of injury 2 years in a row. Mm-hmm. Those guys need to be the difference makers in terms of depth for me.
Not having Bobby McMahon last year is a very, very, against the Bruins, like with a team that does have the size over the Leafs, especially last year, having somebody like Bobby McMahon who has the size and is fast as hell. Like he's underratedly such a quick skater.
Yep.
And he's also got a bit of a finishing touch, as we found out over the past 12 months, I would say. Man, not having him definitely sucked, and will definitely be could be a huge X factor for the Leafs in this round, but he isn't the X factor that I picked for the Leafs. My X factor is Mr. Matthew Knies. Matthew Knies has really elevated his game this year. It was one of 3 players this year to have over 25 goals and over, is it 150 hits or 175 hits?
I think it's 150 hits, and the 3 names are I'll give you the one name that's not in this series. Tom Wilson is 3.
And the other guy? Brady Tkachuk. Yeah, I mean, listen, we know how good Brady Tkachuk is. Matthew Knies actually finished, in terms of points, relatively similar to Brady Tkachuk. Now, this is also a caveat that the Sens have kind of been too. Yeah, Sens have been holding Tkachuk out for precautionary reasons over the last few weeks, especially with their playoff seed already kind of locked up a few weeks prior. They weren't really playing for much going down the stretch. They kind of locked themselves into that wildcard 1 seed. But for Matthew Knies, like, he's been fantastic, especially after the Four Nations break as well. He's a big catalyst for why that power play is so good. Him and JT in front of the net and as like bumpers have been miraculous. And that also goes without saying, like Mitch Marner playing power play quarterback, playing a 5 forward system. A lot of people might not have enjoyed the thought of that heading into the season, but seeing it in action has given me a lot more pause. It's given me a lot more leeway for this power play. Recently, they haven't been lights out like they were for big stretches after the Four Nations break. But I was at the game against the Habs, the game where the Habs could have clinched a playoff spot with.
It was as eventful a 1-0 game as you could possibly watch.
And I will say I was sitting on the side for one of the Leafs power plays, and the Leafs outshot the Habs like to holy heck basically all game. And there was one power play in particular, I believe it might have been like the second one of the game, they must have put on at least 10 grade A chances. Yeah. Like they were firing that thing, and Jakub Dobeš was playing fire. Spoiled to them for that. And it just gives me some pause because I've seen that power play, especially in the playoffs, just wilt and collapse around that time. Like they would have had a game against Montreal last year in the same types of circumstances. They would have got 3 power plays and put up a shot, if that, in three attempts. But this doesn't look to be like that type of power play, and Matthew Knies is a big reason why having him and JT on the ice, I think it's going to be a lot for the Sens to handle, especially some of those defenders. Now,
I've got a question on the Matthew Knies thing for you here.
Go right ahead.
Similar to Gabe Landeskog question. Does Matthew Knies, to be an X factor, have to do stuff between the whistles? Like, can he just be a great player in between the whistles to be an X factor, or does he have to kind of match the extra spice that Brady Tkachuk brings to the Battle of Ontario?
So here's the thing. I don't think anybody else will match that spice other than Matthew Knies. In the top 6, I would say, because I think Max Domi can do those sorts of things, but I'm also not really trusting Max Domi to play those types of minutes and being out on the ice when Brady Tkachuk is on the ice, especially defensively. I don't think that's a great matchup. But if Matthew Knies wants to be the Gronk that everybody kind of makes him out to be, I think this playoff might be the playoff where he kind of asserts himself as that type of player. Okay. I could quickly just jump over to the Sens X Factor. And we mentioned it before. Jake Sanderson, I think he has had the Leafs on lock all season. Him and Artem Zub have been very, very good together. And Artem Zub's not the guy I would have thought to play on Jake Sanderson's wing, but I think that's just how good Jake Sanderson is, that he could maybe make any defensive partner just look great. And that's not a slight on Artem Zub, who is very good. But Jake Sanderson, now this is his first playoff series. Is he able to elevate his game to a level that is even better than his regular season? I guess we'll find out, right? I think for me, he is the biggest X factor for the Sens in a team full of potential X factors, because we really don't know what the Sens have right now, right? So we'll see. We will see.
Yeah, those are good. I love the questions that are being asked here. And I actually want to do my Ottawa blame game first if they end up losing, which I think, fingers crossed, we're hoping for. It kind of builds into the question of, is Matthew Knies going to be that agitator outside of the whistles? I have a different take. I think I have a bit of a juicy blame game for Ottawa. Not the person, but the reason why. So I'm going to pick Brady Tkachuk as to their blame game if they don't end up winning. Look, I think you can end up blaming probably anybody on this team. It's their first playoff series since Brady Tkachuk and this young core has entered the league, which is kind of crazy because Brady Tkachuk has played over 500 games in the NHL already. But he is obviously, we've seen him play in this environment of late. He's going to be geared up in this series. Like I said, it's his first of his career. We've seen him in the Four Nations. Absolutely, he's a lunatic, and that's what makes him tick, right? 3 goals in 4 games. He obviously fought very early on in the game. Was it Bennett, right? It was Bennett. How can I forget, right? As you alluded to, Dave, he's rested since March, so I feel like he's probably going to have the legs under. But I have a feeling our boy Craig Berube has a plan in the works, and I feel like he's had a plan in the works for a good while now. So we talk about Matthew Nyes, but this might be where Scott Laughton actually earns that first round and Gulbenkian return, okay? We see Brady Tkachuk as this guy who can obviously score, but I think a lot of the times the knock on him is he gets way too emotional, that he lets his own game slip away from him, and he goes and he throws hands or he goes after guys because of late checks, and he completely loses. He sees red, for lack of a better term.
Let's get the red mist.
He's got the red mist, and who better to kind of stir things up outside of a Nyes who might need to – maybe he gets off on – maybe his game gets better as he gets more aggressive, but Laughton is not necessarily having a great offensive stretch, to say the absolute least. That's an understatement outside of that overtime winner.
Yeah, I was about to say,
right?
Last goal scorer in regular season.
Scotty Lotz.
Crazy.
So – He's going to probably have to get under Brady Tkachuk's skin, and if he can kind of agitate him, slash here and there, a couple cross-checks behind the ref's back, that might bode really well for the Sens, and maybe we throw him off his game because he gets too wired. So I think if the Leafs have a chance to absolutely dominate here, it's because Brady Tkachuk gets off his game, and I have a feeling Scott Laughton might be the heel to Brady Tkachuk and hit the kryptonite, for lack of a better term, as well, if the Leafs are going to kind of blow past him, because he is going to be a threat.
Mando,
sign me up for that, man. Sign me up.
I love that take, especially going hand in hand with the reports that after the game against the Red Wings, Laughton was like, I'm just focused on the postseason, and the best way that he's like, I've been watching the highlights from the 2000s to the early 2000s playoff series to kind of like get into that mode. Like, he's grown up a Leaf fan.
That.
He knows what it's about. But, you know, it's always good for a nice little refresher of why you're in the position that you're in. I mean, listen, if we have a Domi on the team, but if Scott Laughton wants to take the Domi name up in quite literal fashion and be the guy to kind of agitate the other guys, I'm completely fine with that. I'm all up for it.
I am ready for the next highlight pack. Okay, Game 1, Battle of Ontario here. The Gordie Howe hat trick for Scott Laughton. That includes a fight. So he fought when I was at the last Sens Leafs game. We lost that game. I don't even remember the score now, but I do remember Scott Laughton fighting Ridley Greig.
Yep.
And so we know he can do that. So we know he can have the fight. Guys, I really want to see one of those old-timing clap bombs off the rush from Scott Laughton.
Off the breakaway.
He's fired it off a couple times now this year. They are so
one of them's going to go in.
They are so satisfying. I don't know if you could have a bigger pop in Scotiabank Arena than off of a Scott Laughton goal in that fashion. So, hey, sign me up for a fight. Just give me the Gordie Howe from Scott Laughton. On the Brady stuff, the one thing I'd say is I love that theory. And this is the thing. We have the slightest bit of evidence that Brady knows how to control himself, and it was Four Nations, right? We saw it outside of in that final game, but I'd say even on the tournament as a whole, when Brady Tkachuk played, he was one of the U.S.'s most dangerous players.
Yes.
Him and like Jake Gensler were the two, right? So he struck fear into all of our hearts in that final, without a doubt. And I don't know if he really did much that saw the red mist, but it just takes one moment, right? That's it. It's in there. It is in there.
Just to counter that, does it maybe help more when you're playing at the Four Nations when you're playing alongside like an Austin Matthews, like you have other guys who can also step up to be the guy, as opposed to you are the guy for the Sens. Like, I don't want to discredit Tim Stützle. I don't want to discredit Dylan Cousins and Shane Pinto, all the other guys on the team. But for lack of a better term, Brady Tkachuk is the guy for that team heading into the Four Nations. I don't know if Brady Tkachuk was the face of the U.S. hockey program, but he ended up kind of becoming that. So maybe what do I know?
But counter to the counter. counter to the counter, I would say because he wasn't the quote-unquote guy to start at that Four Nations tournament, I think it would have opened him up to do more extracurriculars. He didn't have to carry the offensive load.
For sure.
In Ottawa, he's got to contribute a lot more just on the ice between the whistles before he can get involved with some other stuff, is what I would say. That would be my perspective. But
I got to counter the counter.
Let's go.
All I will say on that is I think it's valid to think that he can hold on to his emotions, and he's a little bit more mature than he was entering the league. Every year will build that in, and the Four Nations helped him, like you suggested, Christian. But when you have Four Nations team, although you have guys like Sam Bennett and players of that stature, on the Canadian side, everyone there is the top class of their player on their respective teams. No disrespect to Scott Lawton, but Craig Berube can say, Lots, look, man, if you score, that's great. But your only goal this series is to piss off Brady Tkachuk. So you can allow a little bit more leeway for players on a regular season team or a regular NHL team in your bottom six to not focus so much on, hey, everyone on Team Canada can score, so not everyone is going to dedicate that agitation to Brady Tkachuk. In this case, Brady Tkachuk is their guy. We have to only shut him down, kind of what you were saying, Dave. Outside of Stützle, I know there's other guys, but you can sacrificial lamb almost a Scott Lawton to dedicate his life to it. So I think there's just more.
I was going to say, Mando, I'm just imagining Craig Berube in his office, and I don't know where the meme comes from, but it's just a line like, if he dies, he dies. Right? That's what you're saying right now about this.
I'm sorry, Scotty. We appreciate it. We traded away a first and Nikita.
Throw him into the fire.
I would say this is going off the rails, but this is really good.
Yes.
It's like you're doing like the movie cast. Like, okay, so imagine like the Leafs roster is the movie cast, and you're voting for like guy to die first. Scott Lawton's high for whatever reason. He's high on my list. If it's like the whole movie, who dies first, he checks out.
The sacrifice won't be forgotten, though.
I can totally see it. Dies in the first 20 minutes of the movie, so
we'll see.
Poor Scott.
I'm fully in.
I love it. Let's see if it can pull through. I do just have the blame game for Toronto, and we already talked about it. It's Marner, right? I mean, unfortunately, it's Marner. There's not a lot to say. 100 points this year. His contract's looming. It could be any one of the core four. Less so probably on Tavares. I think Matthews and Nylander can also be that guy. It's just going to bounce around that triangle who has the least amount of points. But they're all playing pretty much their best hockey outside of Matthews, but he has had a decent past couple games. I think it's any of them. It's probably Marner, but it leads me to just one question for you guys. I know it could be a ridiculous question, but I'm genuinely curious what your thoughts are. So let's say first 3-4 games, Marner goes pointless or he has in a couple assists, but he's not performing, right? Is it a completely ridiculous thought that Craig Berube might say, you're playing a lot of minutes, let's take you off the PK and focus on just offense and playmaking? I don't know if that's a good play. I'm not saying it's a good decision, but I just wonder if there's a way to get Mitch Marner going. He's obviously an incredible two-way player, but is there going to be like, you're focused too much on both ends, we need the offense from you, let's maybe put you on the second unit or let's reduce that amount of time? Is that a crazy thought, or do you think he just kind of rides Marner and he'll figure it out himself?
Knowing Craig, he's just going to ride him, personally. Yeah. He's done that. I think this year is like the most amount of minutes that Matthews and Marner have played in their Leafs tenures, which is crazy because at the beginning of the season, everybody was calling for Mitch Marner to not play on Matthews' wing, and they've kind of looked dynamite together when healthy and when playing together. Yeah, I think that's a fair point to ask. I just don't think Craig Berube is the guy to do that. Fair. I don't even think in desperate like a desperate time calls for desperate measure case is he even going to consider that. Regardless, right. Like I think the Leafs like PK is much more improved or like the personnel on the PK is much more improved than in years past. So maybe you can actually get away with not having Mitch Marner, even if it's not starting the PK and it's getting like the last 30 seconds in, if that's the case, something like that. I don't see it with Craig Berube personally.
Fair. Okay.
I've got two thoughts here. I think Mitch Marner is similar to goalies who, when they feel the puck early, it improves their play for the season on a whole. Like they like to face 30 plus shots. I kind of think that Mitch Marner is in most of his groove when he plays a lot. I think that's kind of part of it. Is he's someone who needs puck touches. That's what feeds into his confidence. And I think the PK is a bit of a motivator for him because, listen, he's great on the penalty kill. And I know that, Mando, you're not saying to take him off because he's a minus there. It is literally just to conserve his stamina and for him to focus, like you said, on the offensive side. But I do think that Mitch Marner takes pride in kind of trying to be the all-around player, the 200-foot guy. And as long as he isn't making a egregious giveaway, I think the more he touches the puck, the better. So that's my thought from like the Mitch Marner perspective. And the PK, I know, Dave, you're saying that I do agree. The personnel looks good. It does look good, but the numbers haven't bared out. And part of that is, like we're saying, down the stretch, you can't really look too much into the numbers because teams aren't putting out their best lineups. That Detroit game, you might as well throw it to the wind in terms of stats. So can't look too far into it. But like I said, they are in the bottom third of the league on penalty kill, both on the year and since Four Nations. I don't know how much you can afford to lose the special teams battle, especially when Ottawa, I'm going to steal this from the Athletics preview of the series. Shout out to Dom Decision, Sean Gentili, and Shayna Goldman. Huge poll of the fact that the Senators the past 3 seasons have drawn the most penalties in the league. There's going to be a lot of action in the box. You're going to rely on your penalty kill hard, and I think Mitch Marner is too big of a component to really fiddle with in the playoffs.
That's fair.
For sure.
Okay.
All right.
Preview predictions.
If that's the case, guys, what is our prediction? I'll start with you, Mando.
Okay. I will give my prediction, and I will have to step off to head to work, and you guys can kind of carry the weight for the East, which I know you can easily do. Look, I think it's Toronto in 6, boys. I don't see any way in which Toronto loses unless it is they beat themselves, Christian. I've thought about that for like a week. So you said that, I think, on the last pod, or at least at some point. I'm like, unless they go inward and they think too much and they tried them fancy stuff. Craig Berube has been here before. He's won, and I know that's not the be-all, end-all, but he will try and rein the boys in. Look, listen, it's the Battle of Ontario. We've seen this before. Let's get our you-know-what together, and let's pick up our socks and win. And I think they're going to end up winning in 6 because Ottawa will have some firepower. They'll push back. But give me Toronto winning on the road at Canadian Tire and just shutting everyone down and moving on.
On the road in front of tons of Toronto fans, am I right? So listen, that was the great thing of this is it didn't matter if the Leafs were in the wild card spot and the Sens won the division. It was always going to be home ice advantage for us. And hey, I feel I if this take is old by Monday and the Sens fans, actually, well, it can't be old because we're only playing in Toronto. But if you listen to this during the week and we've got some games at Canadian Tire and the Sens fans show up, good on them.
Yeah.
But I'm here in stride. Leafs in 6. Didn't mention the goaltending, but this is the best we've seen from the goaltending duo in Toronto since maybe the Battle of Ontario in the early 2000s. I'm looking for a business-like approach from Toronto. That's what we've gotten for Craig Berube all season. Not many banger quotes from Berube through games 1 to 82. I just want a nice, calm series, and I know that's basically impossible going up against Brady Tkachuk, but that is what I'm aiming for. Just look at round 2. I want it to just be nice and easy, and 6 games is what I've got for Toronto.
Yeah.
I also have Leafs in 6, which might be also a bad sign for us that we're all agreeing with this. But I will say, if it does go the dread in distance and it does go to 7, I might not be putting my money on the Leafs in that game. The Game 7 demons are still alive and well, and until it happens, maybe this is the year. I just can't get behind them in 7, so I'm hoping for everybody's sake that it ends before 7.